Have you ever wondered about the roots and consequences of the legendary Marlon Brando versus Burt Reynolds feud? If yes, then be prepared for some magic. It will happen literally in about 15 seconds. Ready? Look at the face on the right side of the screen. It's young Marlon Brando. Now look at the face on the left. It's Burt Reynolds. And now the magic itself. Focus pocus, abracadabra, and voila. Astonishing, isn't it? These two actors look so similar they could be the same person. This uncanny resemblance isn't just a curious coincidence. It's the catalyst for a conflict that lasted decades and altered the course of cinema history. This isn't hyperbole. It's fact. Several iconic films we know today, including the whole Godfather trilogy, exist in their current form precisely because of this feud. Before we reveal all the spicy details, we need to clarify one thing. Marlon Brando and Burt Reynolds are two of the most precise lookalikes in all of Hollywood history. Just look at them. Both possessed that classic rectangular face shape that defined masculine beauty in Hollywood. Their features matched with remarkable precision, from their intense, brooding eyes to their distinctive cheekbones and expressive lips. The few differences between them were so minor, they only made the broader similarity more striking. Reynolds' features might have been slightly sharper, Brando's slightly broader, but these tiny variations were barely noticeable. It was this mirror-like resemblance that would shape both their careers, starting when Reynolds began gaining attention in the late 1950s through television work. Much later in his career, he would turn down major roles like James Bond, Han Solo in Star Wars, the Oscar-winning role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Richard Gere's part in Pretty Woman. Early on, he had to take any job available and endure all commentary, even unfavorable ones. His natural talent and photogenic looks quickly drew comparisons to Marlon Brando, already a cinematic icon. These comparisons were both a blessing and a curse, as Brando was considered one of the greatest actors of his generation. As Reynolds' career gained momentum, he faced a unique challenge, stepping out of Brando's formidable shadow. The media and public seemed obsessed with their physical similarities, constantly drawing parallels that made it difficult for Reynolds to establish his individual artistic identity. Brando, known for his disdain of imitation, viewed these comparisons with particular irritation. Reynolds' response to this persistent comparison was both clever and provocative. Rather than shy away from the resemblance, he chose to confront it head-on through performance. His opportunity came in 1963 with a memorable episode of The Twilight Zone called The Bard. In this episode, Reynolds delivered a cutting parody of Brando that would become a pivotal moment in their unspoken rivalry. Playing Rocky Rhodes, a young, self-absorbed actor, he meticulously mimicked Brando's distinctive acting style. He exaggerated Brando's method acting techniques, turning them into a comedic critique of the actor's perceived pretentiousness. Reynolds' performance was a masterclass in satire. He replicated Brando's mumbling speech, brooding demeanor, and iconic looks. The character's exaggerated facial expressions and body language were direct, humorous jabs at Brando's most recognizable performance traits. The episode's comedic twist came when the summoned William Shakespeare, frustrated by Rhodes's lack of respect for classical acting, punches the character. This scene was more than just a laugh. It was a symbolic takedown of Brando's acting style, highlighting what Reynolds saw as the actor's self-importance. This parody was one of the early public instances where Reynolds openly mocked Brando, setting the stage for their long-standing feud. The consequences of this bold move would echo throughout both men's careers, particularly during one of Hollywood's most pivotal casting decisions. During The Godfather's development, director Francis Ford Coppola became convinced that Burt Reynolds would be perfect for the role of a young Michael Corleone. Today, it's practically impossible to imagine anyone other than Al Pacino bringing Michael Corleone to life. But at the time, Reynolds seemed an inspired choice. After all, considering that Michael was Vito Corleone's son, and the role of Vito was promised to Marlon Brando. The casting made perfect sense. Both actors would have looked incredibly convincing as father and son. So striking was Reynolds' resemblance to young Brando. Yet this perfect casting was not to be. Brando, still harboring resentment from Reynolds' earlier mockery, allegedly threatened to vacate his role as Vito Corleone if Reynolds joined the production. This pattern of interference would repeat itself a few years later, when Coppola considered Reynolds for Apocalypse Now. Once again, Brando, already cast as Colonel Kurtz, reacted with unprecedented hostility to the mere suggestion. An audio recording captured on set revealed the depth of Brando's antipathy, as the Oscar-winning actor called his rival the epitome of something that makes me want to throw up, before adding venomously, "He worships at the temple of his own narcissism." The irony of these statements wasn't lost on many in Hollywood, coming from a man who showed up to the Apocalypse Now, set weighing 300 pounds, knowing none of his lines, having not read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, upon which the film was based, and refusing to work with his primary co-star, Dennis Hopper. But Brando wasn't finished. He went on to share what he considered damning evidence of Reynolds' inauthentic nature. "What really disgusted me. I saw him on TV one time. The kid was brought in and was about 3 or 4 years old. He wanted to show how loving he was. So he stooped down and was playing for the cameras. Oh, how I love children, that sort of thing. And the kid started to go off camera. So he pulled the kid back, trying to make the kid make a little scene of how sweet Burt was, in respect to children. The whole idea of hustling children. The kid wouldn't do the bullshit." Reynolds' response to this ongoing antagonism came in April 1980, when he hosted Saturday Night Live. Seizing the opportunity for a perfect comedic revenge, he delivered a memorable sketch parodying Brando, a direct response to learning about Brando's interference with the Godfather casting. The sketch featured Gilda Radner as television host Baba Wawa, a parody of Barbara Walters, attempting to interview Reynolds' version of Brando. The actor's portrayal was devastatingly accurate. A gluttonous, out-of-shape Brando lying in bed, stuffing his face with food, while completely ignoring Baba Wawa's questions. The absurdity of the situation, combined with Reynolds' pitch-perfect timing, made it an unforgettable moment of televised revenge. Despite these public jabs, Reynolds generally chose to take the high road by avoiding direct criticism of Brando in the press. It's worth noting that Brando's most vicious comments were never intended for public consumption, having been captured in private recordings. The sole exception came in one of Reynolds' last major interviews. When asked if he was upset about his infamous feud with Brando, Reynolds offered an elegantly subtle response. "No, I was very flattered. I was flattered he was upset." On the surface, this seems like a light-hearted, humorous remark. But there's more to it. The 40-year feud between these icons left an indelible mark on Hollywood history. Their rivalry directly influenced the casting of some of cinema's most iconic films, most notably The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. The question of what if still lingers. How different would these classics be if Reynolds had landed those roles? Would the father-son dynamic between Brando and Reynolds, as members of the same mafia family, have created a different kind of magic on screen? What began as a simple physical resemblance evolved into one of Hollywood's most consequential rivalries, proving that sometimes the most powerful conflicts aren't just about what makes people different, but about what makes them the same. The Reynolds and Brando War is a story about identity in Hollywood, about the struggle to establish oneself in an industry where comparisons are constant, and similarities can be both a blessing and a curse. And that concludes our look at Hollywood's greatest mirror war. What do you think? Could Reynolds have been better than Al Pacino as Michael in the Godfather trilogy, or just different? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into classic Hollywood history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Until next time.